Hey, I got a new book review for you. This time it's a collection. This is a collection of 7 stories called Blades and Bullets. And this came out last year, I believe. Like I said, it's 7 stories, and there's a mix here. This is what makes this collection unique is that it's not just one thing. Most of the time, someone puts out some sort of anthology or collection, or whatever, and it's one specific like subgenre repeated over and over from different authors' perspectives. There's a whole mix of stuff here. So there's high fantasy, more traditional sword and sorcery. There's some modern thriller type stuff. It's a mixed bag, and that's who it's for. So right off the bat, I always think when I want to do one of these videos and I'm reading a book or something and I want to tell people who it's for, this collection is for people that have maybe eclectic taste in fiction. There's even actually a really cool horror story in this as well that I like a whole lot. So that's what it is, Blades and Bullets. Now I'm going to be upfront. I'm always transparent in these things. I'm transparent and anyway. I mean, I try to be as honest as possible in everything that I do. So there's quite a few stories in this collection that I just didn't like, and I'm just going to tell you that right off. So I'm not even going to like tell you why I don't like them. I don't want to be negative or spread negativity about some of these stories. Instead, I'm just really going to focus on 2 stories from the collection that I liked quite a lot. I'm going to talk about those things and tell you why I liked them. And just because I don't like some of the other stories in the collection, it doesn't mean that they're bad stories or anything. If anybody knows me, I don't like anything really. I pretty much hate everything. So it's okay. If you're one of the other authors in this collection and I'm not mentioning your story, it's not, don't take it personal. I mean, you could just look through my channel and see my opinions and stuff and figure out why your stuff just wasn't for me. But it is for other people, because I will say this, the stories that I didn't like are probably the stories that would be most likely to be popular from this collection. So that's that. So of the 2 stories that I did like, I'm going to start with the shorter of the two because I have less to say about it. The other one that I like was the longer story in the book, and I got a lot to say about that one. This one is titled Clean Boost. And what makes this Blades and Bullets collection interesting is that when I'm opening, I have the digital version. Let me just tell you that too. I read this on digital. I don't have a paperback to hold up to the camera for you this time. But when I'm reading through the book and I come to the story Clean Boost, I have no idea what to expect at all. It's the first story of Mike Leon's in the collection. And the stuff that came before it was vastly different than this one. So I really like that. I like surprises. I like not being, fed a cookie cutter of something or another. And this story is really cool. The gist of it, it's a modern story. It's a modern horror story, modern supernatural horror story. And if you know me, you know that there is no such thing as horror unless it's supernatural. Reality horror, naturalism in horror it's not horror. It's just nature. So, but this is beyond nature. Essentially, without giving too much away about the story, it's about hang on. I'm a retired musician, so this story really spoke to me. It's about a guy that comes across I'm not going to say haunted because that's not really fair, but a supernatural guitar pedal. Now, I used to have a guitar pedal called Supernatural Reverb, and it was literally titled that. The Supernatural Reverb pedal had a certain tone to it, not a clean tone. Like with this is all about clean boost, which means that a guitar pedal that amplifies, that doesn't amplify, it doesn't. It enhances the tone of the guitar going through it without morphing it into something else. It like brings out the essence of that tone, and that's one way to put it, I guess. The Supernatural Reverb doesn't do that. It adds all sorts of artifacts, and I used it with keyboards. That's how much of artifacts that it put on it. You're not watching this to hear about that. You're watching this to hear about the stories. Clean Boost is really cool because this guy comes across this guitar pedal that has this way of bringing something out in the relationship between him and his girlfriend. And this guitar pedal only works, it's magic. It only does this special thing when the two of them are present. Kinda. There's a twist to that. But essentially, it's at its strongest when the two of them are present. And this guy he's kind of a struggling musician. He works as a valet driver, so he's dealing with idiots and rich snobs all day long. They got an apartment. They share a wall with this old lady that won't tell them, was always telling them to shut up. She's like just a nightmare neighbor, and they can't stand her, and she can't stand them. And this guy's just, he just really wants to he wants to get a break in the music industry so he could quit his stupid job and become the kind of inspiration to others that he wants to be, right? So I relate to all of this with this guy. I mean, the guy in this story is very, very similar to myself. So I like this story for that reason, especially. I also like all of the little bit of like guitar shop sort of music nerd stuff. Like the guy, when this guitar pedal doesn't work the way he expects, he thinks it's defective, and he goes back to the store he bought it from. And right off the bat, like the guy's trying to sell him monster cables and stuff. And I just remember those days. Like you go into these places and they want to fix everything with like overpriced cables. And monster cables is like an actual brand of cables that were just, it is in my opinion, they were just notoriously gimmicky as far as a cable was concerned. All this kind of stuff is in it. And there's references to like, there's this one little dorky guy, like a kid sort of like demonstrating or testing out a guitar in the shop. And he refers to him as like, this Blackie Lawless wannabe, and 99% of the people that read this book aren't going to know who Blackie Lawless is. I know who Blackie Lawless is, and I can imagine some teenager idolizing Blackie Lawless in the modern era. This is not a story in the past; it takes place today. So if you're a kid today and you idolize Blackie Lawless, you're a very unique type of like hopeless and clueless individual. But I don't mind Wasp at all. In fact, the Wasp album I like the most is the one that's like KFD, I believe is the initials for that one, KFD. It's like their 90s industrial album that they came out with. It's my favorite Wasp album. I like that way better than any of like the straight up heavy metal that they came out with. Whatever. Again, you're not here for that. He gets this pedal and it brings this thing out of his relationship with his girlfriend. Their relationship isn't struggling or anything, but it enhances it. I can't tell you too much. I'm just going to say this, that I think of I relate a lot of stories that I read to movies that I've watched. And one movie that has an ending shot, like the camera has a shot at the very end of it that sticks with you. It's like a freeze frame, more or less. The ending shot of Sleepaway Camp, the ending shot of this story gives me the same sort of feeling as that ending shot of Sleepaway Camp. It's not like that same sort of like twist that you have in Sleepaway Camp, but it is uniquely disturbing and fascinating at the same time how this story ends. So Clean Boost by Mike Leon is the first of the two stories that I really liked from this collection. And I don't know of any other story like it. I can't think of anything else I've read that panders to music geeks and fans of this sort of stuff. And here's something else I got to say about it. So I also think when I read stories or books or whatever, like what is the moral of the story? And the vast majority of things I read have no moral. It's usually just characters acting out their roles. They're the same at the end that they were at the beginning. And the story doesn't convey any deep meaning about life or existence here, what it means to be human, any of that. And I'm not saying the Clean Boost is like it has a moral to it. It certainly doesn't. But the takeaway from that is it portrays the understanding that women are much closer to the supernatural than men are. And women are more likely to become a muse, not amused, but a space muse for forces beyond what we see and what we hear every day. And I think that's really cool. And it does that in a way that doesn't seem like goofy or anything. It's like and it doesn't beat you over the head with it either. It's just part of the story. On top of that, the thing I took away is that as women can be the muse for the supernatural, that ability of them to embody, embrace, and echo the supernatural is the inspiration for the men that cannot reach it themselves. So the man in the story, he doesn't have direct contact with the beyond, but through his girlfriend's, I don't want to give too much away, through what happens, he is able to be inspired by her amusement. What do you call it? What's the word for that? her amusedness, her being amused for the supernatural, gives him the inspiration that he needs to take his artistry to another level. And I think that is synonymous for anyone that is an artist of any sort, a male artist of any sort, is that no matter how much we want to deny it, we find inspiration with the female connection to the supernatural. And that's echoed through all sorts of music and art and everything. Half the stuff I got around this house. I mean, my favorite film director is Jean Rollin. Favorite horror director, I should say, is Jean Rollin. And that's all what his movies are about. And this story has a lot of that in it. I thought this would be a short explanation of Clean Boost, but it was a longer one than I expected. So let me just stop talking here and tell you about the next one. Just look at that little boy down there laying down. He's been down there the whole time. He's hiding behind me. Actually not. I'm standing in front of him because that's his bed. He knows that's his bed, and he's wondering, why am I standing in front of it talking to you people? Now, the second story I want to tell you about is called The Mountain by Sena Andeo. And it's the last story in the collection, and I would say it's probably my favorite from the whole book. It's a longer one, and of everything in this collection, this is the one where I had to pause it because it was longer, and I took a break and did some other things around the house. And it was the story that I was looking forward to coming back to finish reading, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I'll read something, and if it doesn't particularly grab my interest, if it's a longer story, I'm not in a rush to come back to it. This one, I was like, I got to finish dinner, I've got to take care of some things, and then I'm going to get right back into my chair and I'm going to finish reading the story because I want to figure out how this thing turns out. So, The Mountain by Sena Andeo. And how should I talk about this one? So, the general plot of this story, before I tell you the plot, when I started reading this one, I was starting to criticize it in the very beginning because there's a lot of facts that are never explained. Like, all right, the story takes place in some other land, sometime obviously in the past. These people are in a secluded village that is surrounded by swampland. And she doesn't use the term jungle, but this is not like the swamp like you would find at, at Myrtle Beach or whatever. This is like serious swamp where there's hazards, and it's so the air is so thick that the people that live in this village can't even see beyond it. All they could see way off in the distance, which in the story is only like 5 miles away, but if you read it, you understand why it feels a lot further than that, is this tall mountain. Okay. So the questions that I'm thinking as I'm reading this and I'm criticizing it is, okay, so these people, how do they get here? They have weapons made of steel. Like the one guy has an axe, there's knives and stuff like that. They're not Stone Age people. So they've got at least they've had to have some contact with another civilization to give them these weapons, right? And they've never been to this mountain, and they've never really been beyond like the perimeter of their village because this swamp that surrounds the village is so dangerous. So it makes you wonder, how did they get there? Who started this thing and all this kind of stuff? And I think that's the kind of stuff that kind of bothered me at the beginning of the story. But as I continued to read it and I stuck with it, I realized none of that matters. This is not, it's not a history lesson. And really, when it comes to fantasy, that stuff shouldn't matter. Like you don't get a lot of description of what these people were wearing or anything like that. Very, very minor descriptions, but like there's not a lot of time wasted on all that kind of stuff to really paint like this image of everything that's happening. And because of that, this story kind of turns into a bit of a parable in the end. So again, like I said earlier, I like stories that have a meaning, that have a purpose, that have some sort of moral to the story. And there is a moral to this story. I'm not so sure if it's this, if I take away the same moral that the author Andeo was inspired to write or not, I might be on a different, different frequency than her as far as that goes. But these villagers have like an elder that passes away just naturally as time's over, and the village needs to elect a new leader to lead them. And there's one gentleman named Rast. He's like the quintessential like alpha male. And what's cool about Rast and what's cool about Andeo's writing is none of these characters in this story are two-dimensional. It'd be very tempting to just make Rast be like the star quarterback of the football team or something like everybody else does. That's boring though. No, that's not realistic. Rast is a very likable alpha male. He's the best hunter in the village. He's the most adventurous. and the girls like him, all this kind of stuff. He's charismatic. He knows how to speak. He's smart. He's not a stupid, dumb jock. He's all around, like, he's just kind of like the all around right guy. The obvious choice, right? And then there's this other guy named Jolin, Jolon, Jolin. And Jolin is a dipshit. I'm just going to say it right off. This guy, I every time I see his name Jolin, I think it says colon, because he just reminds me of like part of someone's digestive system. This guy, I can't stand Jolin throughout this whole story. Now that's where I'm probably on a different frequency than Andeo. I don't know. Maybe I'm not, because the story has a progression where the author kind of makes you feel sympathetic. Let me say this. The author intends to make normal people feel sympathetic towards Jolin. I'm not a normal person. I can't stand this guy. He's like the ultimate screw up. He screws everything up. He's the worst hunter in the village. Nobody respects him. He can't do anything right. He's got no friends in the village at all. Nobody likes him. He's not charismatic. And it's not like he's a failure in all these ways because he's better at something else. Like there's a virtue in being the outsider in a village, being the rebel in a village, being someone that goes against the grain because you're following, like, what do people say now? Your own truth, any of that kind of nonsense. But you've got your own goals in life and you're committed to those things, and you lose out because of that. Those kind of characters I could relate to. That's not Jolin. Jolin doesn't do anything. He doesn't think. He doesn't contemplate. He doesn't plan. He acts on emotional whims all the time. He's just like a beta, He's just not a good guy. And on top of all that, he's madly in love with one of the females in the story, Cessair. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Cessair, if I remember correctly, Cessair. And she's got him in the friend zone. Like she wants nothing to do with him except whenever it kind of sort of like gives her a little bit of comfort. She considers him like a brother. Well, she actually calls him her brother at one point in the story. So he's also like that. Like he's just a simp for this girl. If this girl had an OnlyFans, he would be bankrupt, giving her money all the time. And she wouldn't care. She'd just be collecting the money. But to Cessair's defense, again, this is why I like this story. It'd be very easy to paint Cessair as some sort of, manipulator. She doesn't manipulate Gerald. She doesn't manipulate Gerald at all. Anything he does because that's what he chose to do. She doesn't give him any false hope. She never promises anything that she doesn't intend to fulfill. None of that kind of stuff. And this is such a long explanation. I always ask myself, why are you watching this? I can't make these things short. As much as I try, heaven forbid if I were to talk about all 7 stories in this book, this would be an hour-long video. I'm only focusing on the 2 I liked. Imagine what I would say. No, don't imagine it. You can imagine it. If you know me, you'd imagine what I'm saying about the others. But anyways, so this leader of their village dies, and they know nothing except that there's a mountain way on the other side of this nasty swamp. All right. So Rast, he's such a cool guy. Like he doesn't say, I'm the new leader, everybody follow me. He lets people decide for themselves. And there's actual conversations in the story. He's such a reasonable guy. He's like, if you want to come with me, you can. If you don't want to come with me, you don't have to. There's some divisiveness between people like being separated and going back. And he's like, I'm not a commander. I'm just a guide, which I thought was a wonderful line. Like that's his line in the thing. I'm not a commander of this group. I'm just a guide. And that's really how people should be. That's the right way for a man to be. I like everything about this guy. And of course, Cessair favors Rast over Jolin. Jolin, right? That's what his name is? Yeah. She favors him, as any woman would, as anybody in the village would. They all would like Rast better. He's a likable guy. He's an actual dude. So what Rast wants to do, though, is he wants to lead the village, if they choose to come with him or not, to this mountain that they see way on the other side of the jungle. Another jungle. It's like a jungle, but it's really a swamp. It feels more like a jungle. I've been in swamps, and swamps are hazardous. Supernatural swamps or whatever are probably much more hazardous, because this is like the swamp itself is an entity. It's like the story starts out as they want to get to this mountain to start a new life, because Rast is smart enough to realize we're screwed here. We've been here for how many generations? We're not doing anything. We could barely feed ourselves. It's just awful. This is a terrible place to live. Let's get to the top of that mountain. Maybe there's more people. We could start a new life. We could hunt proper game because they eat like rats and stuff like that. It's like nasty. They're living a nasty life. He's doing all the right stuff and he wants to go there. And if they want to come with him, they can. So Cessair falls for him. She likes this strength of him, as she should. And a good portion of the village goes with them. And another good portion of the village stays back. And their plan is to get to the top of the mountain, see what's there. And if there's anything of value or some hope for the village, they'll come back to get the other people and bring them there, or whatever the case may be. So they set out in the swamp. And the story's really good because you're reading it. You're watching it. It feels like you're watching it. You're reading it. And it starts out very gradual. There's like these mysterious creatures in the nighttime. It almost feels like the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village, where like there's mysterious things happening to these people in this isolated community. And in the movie, The Village, it turns out to be that they're just people in costumes. It's all a ruse. Rouge? Is it a rouge like makeup? It's a ruse. That's the word, right? Ruse. And this gives you that feeling. So because she's very mysterious, the author is very mysterious with how she gradually introduces you to the true threat of this swamp. And it starts out like, is this just people in costumes? And then as it goes further and further, the swamp becomes an entity in itself. The swamp has its own goals and ambitions and its own desires to either let some of these people live or kill some of these people. They get introduced to all these different creatures. There's a great 1970s horror movie called Squirm. I don't know if you've ever seen Squirm. I highly, highly recommend Squirm. Squirm is a movie about killer worms, right? And there's a scene in this story where there's these worms that just attack these people and they bore into the people's faces, just like the worms do in the movie Squirm. So you should watch Squirm. It's really a good movie. There's all these kind of creatures like that. There's wolves that attack them, but the wolves are described in such a way that they almost look human. They're not werewolves, nothing like that, but they're just this weird, ultra intelligent human feeling. They give a sensation of being human, even though they're wolves. And the swamp ends up taking on a life of its own to trick these just hopeless villagers that are just barreling their way through this. There's thorns everywhere, and there's insects like you'd imagine, and poisonous plants. And it's only 5 miles away, but it takes them days and days and days to get it because they're just literally like hacking through all this stuff. It's just like a wall of sickness and quicksand everywhere and all the other pitfalls that could happen. And but the swamp ends up tricking them into hallucinating. It ends up mimicking some of the characters in the party here that are trying to get across, playing tricks on their mind and all this kind of stuff to basically consume the people, essentially. So that's the general plot. That's kind of the stuff that happens. I don't want to give away the ending, but the reason I said there's a moral to this story is this Colin character is really the protagonist of the story. He's the main character, right? And like I said, he's a dipshit. He can't do anything right. He's a complete loser. He's a klutz. Dweeb, a little squirt. He's awful. Everything about him is just terrible. He has no sense of humor. He can't do anything right whatsoever. He just bumbles his way around. He's like Dennis the Menace of the village. But Dennis the Menace was at least cute. He had a slingshot. This guy's got an axe, and he can't even use his axe properly. Jolin. It would be great if Dennis the Menace had an axe, though. Could you imagine that show? Giving Dennis the Menace an axe, going over to Mr. Wilson's house? He'd really tear up those flowers with an axe. That'd be wonderful. What was I saying? The moral. Yeah, so this whole time, like, I get the feeling that the author is telling me that this Jolin guy is just a misunderstood person. You know, the meek shall inherit the earth, all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, he's portrayed as a victim of circumstances. He's the nice guy, right? But in his mind, he thinks that like everyone else is not him, like the opposite of him. Like he thinks that Rast is like a jerk, and he's not a jerk. It's very clearly portrayed in the story. Rast is not a jerk. But he blames Rast for taking Cessair away from him in the story. And all these kind of things happen. And at the very end of this, I can't tell you what happens at the end because I know that the author will be mad if I tell you this. And most of you who watch these videos don't like to know the ending. But there's a revelation that takes place at the ending. And in that revelation, my opinion of that revelation is that Jolan realizes that he was a piece of shit throughout the whole thing. That all of the stuff that he was projecting on other people were really his own faults. And at the end, he has to live with that burden of just being a screw up the whole time. And the part where I kind of depart, I would assume I depart from the author, is that there's a thing here where like his actions, he always thought he was being selfless and altruistic, and that his actions were the depiction of what love is actually like. Love is a sacrificial emotion, is what Colin was thinking. And at the end, he realizes he was being selfish this whole time. And in the process of being selfish, that's what caused him to be having the feelings he has at the end. I'm not going to tell you what happens. But his revelation at the end is actually his revelation of understanding he was being selfish when he thought he was being selfless. That's what I think the author thinks. I don't know that for sure. My opinion, though, is that he just realizes that he sucks at life at the end, and that if he would have just been better at life earlier on in the story, much of this could have been avoided. He may have found a solution for their problems in the village, but he couldn't ever get his shit together to do anything right. So I kind of like that. I like that view of it, that it's got nothing to do with altruism or selfless love or anything, because love is not a selfless emotion. Anyone that tells you that love is a sacrifice doesn't know the first thing about love. It's not a sacrifice. But I kind of like, that's my perspective on it. And I'm probably wrong according to the author about that, but too bad. That's how I feel about it. So that's the mountain. That's the mountain. And like I said, it is a parable because you don't need to know anything about this land. There's no world building. I hate world building. It's such a waste of time. Just get to the point and tell me what the story's about. And this story is about this man's journey from being a screw up to being someone that recognizes that he was a screw up. And I wish I could tell you more, but it would ruin the ending if I tell you more. Okay. That's all the stuff I liked about it. I liked the story a lot. It was very well written. The thing that I liked primarily in reading it is that Césaire is a wonderful female. She's not the protagonist, but she's a very strong female character. And I think people misunderstand what it means to be a strong female character in stories. Césaire is great. She's not rude. She's not bitchy. She's compassionate when she needs to be. She's nurturing when she needs to be. She's brave when she needs to be. She has her own skill set, but at the same time, she's not out there hunting lions either, like half the women in these other stories. She's not a boss bitch. She's just a proper woman, like a great female character. It's so refreshing to read somebody portrayed in that way. I liked all that. What I didn't like, I got to say something what I don't like. What didn't I like? The language of the story was much too modern for my taste. It's a style thing. The way the story is written, there's nothing wrong with it. It's written wonderfully. It's very well composed and everything, but it feels like these are high school kids going through all this because there's all this drama happening between the relationship and jealousy and who's backstabbing who. Are they really backstabbing? Is this all in my head? All the kind of drama you have when you're in high school and, you don't get the girl you want in high school. That's what Colin's going throughout this whole thing. And it has to be there. That the sentiments have to be included for the story to make sense, but there's just too much of that for me. And it's portrayed in such a way that these people are like on death's door trying to get through this swamp, and they're not going to be bickering. You don't do that. Like and this is a very common thing. This is not even a knock on the author because it's such a common trend in film and in stories that they love to like put people in situations where they're forced to bicker, and it's their bickering that puts their own survival in jeopardy. That doesn't happen in reality. That's not real life. When people are put in a survival situation, they get together. They figure it out because they're reasonable enough to know that if they don't figure it out, they're all going to die. So like this kind of stuff irks me a little bit. And the constant bickering and Colin going on and on about his emotions and, oh my God, he's holding her hand. Oh my God. Like, no, you wouldn't care about him holding her hand. You got worms burrowing into your face, Colin. Worry about the worms in your face, not the fingers in the hand of Césaire. It does it in her hair. And then her hair was like tousled in one scene. And he's like, oh my God, what were they doing that night? Her hair's all tousled. They're not going to be doing anything. They're in a swamp and there's quicksand everywhere. Get a grip, dude. I didn't like that. And then part of the language too is a bit too modern. Like they're talking, they use like the term partner, like someone's wife is not called their wife in this story. It's called their partner. They're not business partners. Don't say partner. If you live with someone, a domestic partner is the word we use for that, but you're not really partners, you know? I just that's a terrible, especially for a story that's obviously supposed to take place in the past. Whatever land this is, it's a land that the most modern technology they have is metallurgy to some capacity. They don't have a compass or anything. And they can't even see the sky. So they can't even tell the direction from looking at the stars because this swamp just has like this nastiness over it. So the sky is always black. It's a miserable, miserable place to be. But the language is too modern. For someone in that setting, there shouldn't be references to partner and stuff like that. And I don't think no one says chill out, but there's something very similar to that, like get a grip. One of the characters says, you need to get a grip. I'm pretty sure I remember that right. There's something very similar to that. You don't know, they wouldn't say that. That's like a modern hip thing for, people in our era to say. That's the most I could criticize it. It kept me coming back. Like I said, I had stuff to do around the house and I was eager to finish what I was doing to come back and finish the story. Yeah. So Blades and Bullets. What is my biggest takeaway for this? Although I did not like the majority of this collection, I don't like the majority of anything, so don't feel bad about that. But although I didn't like the majority, I do honestly think, I don't know if Sena's story is published anywhere else. This might be the only place it's published. It's worth it just for that. That story alone, I think, makes it where it's one of the longer ones in the book. It's very well written. It's very interesting. The characters are all likable, except for Colin, but he's portrayed in a way that you shouldn't like him. And it's an honest portrayal of that kind of jerk. It's worth it for that story alone. And then Clean Boost as well. Clean Boost is a shorter story from the collection. But if you like supernatural horror, and if you have any interest in music technology whatsoever, or if you're into any of the heavier styles of music that do deal with legitimate supernatural occurrences and stuff like that, I think Clean Boost will appeal to you. It's worth it for those two stories alone. So I'll put a link to Blades and Bullets in the description of this video. It's available on Amazon, paperback and Kindle, if I remember correctly. And you should check it out. And and again, you probably disagree with me on everything anyways. So the stories that I didn't like, you probably will like. Because like I said, the vast majority of the populace will like that kind of stuff. It's just what's in nowadays. And I've never been into what's in. I never even saw Titanic. So if that means anything to you, it doesn't. You didn't even watch this far. You're not watching this video now. I'm talking to anybody else but you. In fact, I might as well just talk to my dog because he's still down there. Look at that boy down there. Little Rickalick. It's late. It's late and it's hot and I'm wearing this sweatshirt because I thought it was a nice new sweatshirt I got at Walmart. Pretty darn hip. It's made out of some space age material that is supernatural because it's like weird. It's a friend of mine said it's going to give me cancer. It's that kind of material. There's really no point for you to watch this. I'm going to go to bed now. Yeah, I think I'll go to bed. Bye.